Alright, so we're just about done with our blog front end. What I want to do now is make it responsive. You can see if I make this smaller, the sidebar just stays there and the logo is cut off, and there's just a lot of problems here. So to fix that, we just need to add a couple CSS3 media queries. And what media queries do is they allow us to define styles for certain window or device or screen sizes. Alright, so we could say, for instance, anything that's under 700 pixels, do this, clear the float, or whatever it may be. Alright, so for this we're going to keep it simple, and we're just going to have I'm going to have one set of media queries aside from the standard layout, and that's going to be for anything that's 900 pixels or smaller. So it's about right here or so. Alright, so this layout we have is fine up until about here. Yeah, up until about here, when the title starts to shrink and starts to get a little demented. Alright, so let's go ahead and do that. Now when you're using the boilerplate framework, it gives you this little area for media queries, and the only one they give you is with a minimum width of 35 M. And I don't even know how big that is, because I don't normally use M's or EMs. So I'm going to replace this with a media query that's going to target screen sizes that are under 900 pixels. Alright, so what we need to do is just do an @ symbol, and we can say media only screen. Alright, this one you can see it says media print, and this is basically styles that's going to take place if you're in print view or if you print the page. Alright, so we're not even going to touch that. We're just concerned with this here. So as long as it's screen, which means it's not print, it's the actual screen. And then in these parentheses, we're just going to put max width 900 pixels. Alright, so that's just telling it that whatever we put in here is going to be effective as long as the window or the screen or the device or whatever is 900 pixels or less, because this is the max. Okay, so the first thing I want to do is, again, we'll start at the top. When we shrink this down, you can see that this H1 over here is giving us some problems, so I would just want to get rid of that. And the way I designed the logo, we can do that. We have basically our logo will still be there, it just won't say the Tech Edge. Alright, so let's do that. So I mean, all we have to do is go inside of these parentheses, and we'll call the branding ID, we'll say branding H1, and then I'll just set this to display none. Alright, so if we go back to our regular sized blog and we reload, you can see the H1 tag is still there, but if we go small, you can see it disappears. Alright, so that'll give us more room for the menus and everything else. So what we want to do is, right now it's set to 50% for the branding and 50% for the navigation, but now we can actually change that. So let's call branding, and we're going to set this, instead of 50%, it's going to be 20%. Okay, and we also want to increase the percentage for the navigation. So we're going to say main nav. Main nav is now going to have a width of 80%. Alright, so now this actually lengthened and this shortened, and now you can see that it flows nicely. Now when you get down to here, they do tend to cut off. We can actually set a separate media query after, and we'll make it so that when it's way down here, when it's like 400 pixels or so, we can make the text smaller and just have it so we can fit it in there. So we'll come back to that. Alright, so for the next thing, I just want to see, probably the biggest thing here is to get rid of the sidebar. Alright, because that's just, it's ruining the whole layout. So, one second, let's define our sidebar. And what we're going to do to the sidebar is stop floating it. So float none, and width is going to be 100% because it's actually going to be on top of the content. Okay, so we need to do the same thing to the actual content. We'll float none, and the width will be 100%. So let's save that, reload, and that looks a lot better. Okay, so the sidebar is nice and it fits nicely. Now here, the section, you can see that the border is actually cut off. We can't see the right border. So I'm actually going to take that down to a width of 90%. And now you can see that the border is there. Alright, actually let's increase it to 91 because you can see it's a little bit short. Alright, that's good. Now the add, this add image, I want to give a bottom margin because you can see it's pressed up against the content below it. So we can actually do that in the regular styling. If I can find it. Alright, so add image, we'll say margin bottom 20 pixels. So that should fix that. Alright, so that looks good. The articles look good. Alright, so the footer, we're going to do the same thing that we did with the section, with the content and the sidebar. We want to get rid of the float and make it stretch all the way across. So let's go down here. And footer left. Actually, we can do this in the same thing. We'll say footer left and footer right. We want to get rid of the float and stretch it all the way across. Huh. Footer left, footer right. Div class, footer right. Huh. Oh, okay. So we want to include this, since we have this up here, we want to include that main footer. So let's see, you'll do, whoop, main footer, footer left, and main footer, footer right. Okay, that should work. Alright, so that looks good. But you know, as we go smaller, you know, maybe we should just get rid of this these floated lists, clear that as well. And that's the footer nav. So let me just see how we have it up here. Alright, so I'm actually gonna just copy this here, this footer nav, li tags. And let's see, Actually, you know what? We need the actual footer nav as well, which is this one. Each of those unordered lists have a class of footer nav, so this will pertain to all of those. And what we're going to do different when it's under 900 pixels is we want to float none. And let's see, that's really it. Actually, we want to set the width as well, the width to 100%. And let's see, the LI tags, actually this is fine, we don't even need this. Alright, so now these lists are on their own line. Copy right down here. I just want to align that to the center. So main footer dot copy, say text align center. Alright, so that looks good. And we're still having an issue with this border, so let me just go to the main content, and I'm going to put that back to 90. It's still not showing. Let me bring it down a little more. We'll say 88. Do 89. Alright, that's perfect. So you can see this looks much better. Now for this navigation up here, let's set another media query. So I'm going to copy this one here. And then down here, I'm going to create one for anything that's under 500 pixels. So this will narrow it down. This will make it even smaller. And what I want to do is for the main navigation, where is it? Yeah, so I'll grab this main navigation LI. We just want to make it smaller. Okay, so let's see. The margin for the right and left is currently 15. I'm going to change that to 5. I'm going to change the font size to 13. And let's change this padding to 3 pixels on the right and left. Everything else can stay the same. If it stays the same, you can just get rid of it. Alright, let's see what that looks like. Alright. Now this here, this is actually going to be smaller than pretty much all the smartphones, so we don't have to worry about it until it gets to about here. Alright, and that looks fine. We just want to get rid of these square things, these bullets. So let's just say list style none. Alright, so that looks good. Like I said, there are solutions like a button that you could press to show all your links, because if you have more than 3 here, it's going to just it's going to mess up. So that would be another thing to look into. Alright, and that border thing is still fading out right here, so let me just change that. Let's go to 88. Actually, put it back to 89, and let's copy it to down here when it's really small, when it's under 500 pixels, and then we can change this to 87 maybe. Alright, perfect. So that's a pretty nice responsive template. And And you can see when we're away from 500 pixels, when we get higher than 500 pixels, then that kicks in, the square bullet and the sizes. Let's make it a little bigger than 500 pixels, because you can see that we still do have some room here where it's kind of messed up. So let's make this 580. There we go. Alright, so nice and smooth transition. Things don't mess up. That's what we want. And everything should be good. If we go to single post, and let's make this small, about here. You can see that the comment form looks awesome. The comments look good. And if we go to add post, that looks great as well. Alright, so I hope you learned quite a bit when it comes to HTML5 markup. In the coming chapters, we will be using fairly heavy JavaScript, because we wanted to include some dynamic applications, not just static layouts like this. But this was a good start. I wanted something that would really show us the HTML5 syntax as opposed to focusing on JavaScript. So I will see you in the next project.